Parkcast, the UK's original theme park podcast.
Welcome back to Parkcast Park Fans. We're a podcast for theme park fans. We're here every week talking about things going on in the theme park industry. We particularly are interested in stuff in the UK, but we do look at globally occasionally as well. I'm Bex. I'm not with Kev this week, but I do have someone joining me, someone who's never been on Parkcast before and who is here for a very good reason. A couple of weeks ago, Merlin Entertainments released their annual report, and there was a sharp intake of breath amongst theme park fans when they saw the headline, which was that Merlin had made a loss of 492 million, double the 214 million of the previous year's accounts. Now, these are the accounts for 2024. Previously, it was 2023. So we're kind of looking a year backwards. But I wanted to get to the bottom of what these figures actually mean. And in fact, I had some requests for an episode on this. I put the feelers out and said, hey, if there's anyone who works in finance, because I certainly don't, who understands this report and can give me a hand and help me understand it, please slide into my DMs. And today's guest did just that. Ross, welcome to Parkcast.
Great to be here.
You're welcome. And you're a listener to Parkcast, so I love that. And you got in touch with me and you said, hey, I am a financial analyst. I work for a FTSE 100 company, and I also love theme parks. And I think I can make some sense of this report that's come out. So you are the person that I need to help me understand Merlin's position.
Yep, that's fine. So as you said, working at a FTSE 100 company, creating this kind of report that Merlin have published is basically my life.
Okay, good.
So I know the ins and outs of these things. I know what can be told, what can be spinned, and what actually kind of changes due to there's accounting losses and there's real losses. And obviously what we've truly published here in the Merlin accounts is an accounting loss.
Right.
The headline figure of 492 million is not a scare. It is just a true accounting loss, and that comes down to certain laws and certain, they're called standards. So when I refer to something called IAS, that stands for the International Accounting Standards. So these are like globally recognized standards. So it makes it easier for shareholders around the world to be able to compare results, like I have been doing against Merlin, against the likes of Disney, Comcast, and Six Flags.
Okay, interesting. Right, there's going to be a fair bit to dig through here. We're not going to go into full depth because we would literally be doing a 6-hour podcast. I'm going to try and keep it as basic as possible so that we can get to the bits that we need to understand and what kind of matters to us as theme park fans. So first of all, are Merlin about to have to sell a theme park? Because that's the headline that's being thrown around everywhere. Merlin are struggling. They're going to have to sell.
Well, they can if they want, but I see no reason.
Okay. So that's interesting. So from an accounting point of view, from a financial analyst point of view, even with that 492 million pound loss, we are not at the point of panic.
If you're at the point of panic is when you are running out of cash. So if you look at their accounts, yes, their working capital is negative, but as I said, I've looked at every other theme park's accounts, and most of their positions in working capital is negative because of the business model. So therefore, when I'm looking at a theme park, I'm more looking at things like debt to assets, because that's obviously, we know rides are expensive.
Yeah.
Most companies need to take out large loans to be able to fund these assets. So looking at that is kind of a key takeaway, but just looking at the pure cash loss. So there's a page which has this is something called a consolidated statement of cash flows. That basically shows the true cash loss to the business in the year. It was only 18 million. It was not the banded around. It was not the banded around figure of 492 million pounds.
Okay. So, I mean, we say only 18 million. I mean, to you and me, 18 million is a lot. But I guess in the terms of a global business, which is turning over the kind of money that Merlin turns over, 18 million is maybe not too bad in the scheme of things. So if you're saying that was their sort of actual cash loss, what is that 492 million? How do we get to that figure?
So 492 million comes from as is actually well versed, coming from the impairment. So that falls under IAS 36, which is for impairment of, which covers intangible assets, which are basically brands. So the brand, Madame Tussauds, is an intangible asset. It's not a physical thing, but it
Right.
has a value as a brand. So we
Okay.
basically, in the accounting world, if we see that brand has a value, it's deemed as an asset to us, it will have a value in our accounts. And we then basically say this is the value it is. But if there is a triggering factor, such as visitor numbers being down, that decreases the value of that brand, we will impair it to a certain value. But however, the total value of that impairment is straight to the bottom line as a loss. So Madame Tussauds lost approximately 163 million, Legoland New York 110 million, and Legoland Korea 53 million. So that is a large proportion, 384 million of that
Yeah.
total loss, to be
Okay.
precise. So that's basically where it's come from, and that's deemed as a non-cash loss. So this rumor about selling a park, they might do it, but they won't do it for cash reasons because they don't need the cash. They have
Okay.
plenty in the bank. This kind of loss is more, but it can also be done in a sneaky accounting way. Is that they may be willing to sell something, such as Madame Tussauds. They have impaired the value of Madame Tussauds by 163 million. However, if they sell it and it gets a larger value than what they're carrying it in their accounts,
Hmm.
then that's called a gain on disposal. And that gain, again, goes straight to the bottom line. So next year, if they did sell
Ah,
something,
yeah.
then they could have a massive get profit. And
Yeah.
then everyone will think they're hunky dory and they're going to build the world's most expensive roller coaster next year.
Please. Okay. So you've mentioned Madame Tussauds. This is, I guess, this is one of the takeaways from this report that everyone can kind of see is that Madame Tussauds is not doing that well. From a visitor number point of view, from a takings point of view, and then obviously you've said from a brand impairment point of view. So who would make that brand impairment? Did Merlin do that themselves? Or is it like an outside auditor comes in and says, right, that's the value of that brand as it stands?
So Merlin themselves would do it, but an auditor would have to basically sign it off as true and fair.
Okay.
So that's basically in the auditing world, when they sign off these financial accounts, it's got to be deemed as a true and fair view of the company at the time.
Yeah.
So they would make the assumption of this is how much we want to impair it, and then they'll basically have to prove the reason to the auditors um, of the value.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of companies have a buffer with materiality. So basically, when I say materiality, it means that the value is not massively out to what someone could deem it to be.
So from your point of view, from what you can see, Madame Tussauds is probably the biggest hindrance to Merlin at the moment because it's not bringing in the visitors, so it's not bringing in the cash. It also means that they report that as a loss on because of this brand impairment thing. So it probably wouldn't be unreasonable to say if they were looking to dispose of something, that would make sense right now. Obviously, this is just our opinions. We are not in the world of Merlin. This is just looking out from the outside in.
Yep, but as I say, I see no reason for them to dispose of Madame Tussauds. It is. I've not been for a few years, but it is always busy when I'm there, especially the one in London.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe the ones in Blackpool and other areas don't do as well. That's maybe just because it maybe doesn't fit with the crowd of Blackpool. I don't know.
But the waxworks, I think, are a bit of a weird thing in 2025 and going forward because clearly when they were created, that was your way as a member of the general public of getting close to celebrities, as close as, it was kind of reasonable. Nowadays, every celebrity's got a social media account. You can see what they're doing most minutes of the day and they'll share a lot of stuff with you. The celebrity world is a lot more accessible to us than it used to be. So maybe we just demand more from our attractions then going and standing next to a waxwork, and maybe that's where it's fallen behind a little bit. Maybe it needed a bit of innovation.
Yep. Yeah, that probably makes sense. And who wants to go and stand next to a waxwork of a sausage roll?
Well, I mean, someone who's a big fan of Greg's, it could be a dream day out for them. Okay, so even that, you're not necessarily saying Merlin are going to need to dispose of. You mentioned the Legoland in New York and in Korea, and I think Merlin specifically highlight them in the report, and they themselves hold their hands up and say, look, these parks aren't performing as we want them to. Is this something that you think they will keep trying?
Well, based on the report, shows that they're not, because they speak about wanting to go to more of just an operational agreement, not running of the park. So probably more of a Tokyo Disney Sea kind of agreement, because Tokyo Disney Sea is obviously using the Disney name, but ran by someone else.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling, and I have an inkling that that's the one that the Shanghai has gone with that kind of style of agreement. So basically, it doesn't rely as much on Merlin to understand the local market.
Yeah. Okay.
And to be honest, until this report, I didn't even know there was a Legoland in New York. So that tells you everything.
Yeah, I know they don't seem to have published that. I know we're in the UK, and maybe we're not the target audience for that, but it doesn't seem to have had a huge amount of talk about it.
The New York area, there is also a highly competitive theme park market.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were speaking to Mark from the US on this podcast just a few weeks ago, talking about US road trips, and he's an NYC guy, and we were saying how much there is to see and do in New York is crazy. So very, very competitive there. Okay, what else can we look at in this report? What's standing out? We can't shy away from the fact that the trend seems to be their overall performance is down. Visitor numbers are generally down.
Yeah, so the visitor numbers are showing as down in the financial reports. That's again some accounting where they need to do basically a restatement, but for last year, but they haven't. Mm-hmm. So there is something in the theme park category where it's showing visitor numbers where they are showing as down about 700,000, and you wouldn't have thought that would have happened in 2024 with the likes of Nemesis Reborn reopening, Hyperia, Minifigure Speedway. However, that's not true. The visitor numbers didn't go down. There is a very small note underneath that says, for some reason, and I don't know why, they used to recognise Warwick Castle as a theme park resort. They've now moved it to a gateway attraction. So therefore, the Warwick Castle numbers have moved to gateway attractions, which has gone up 1 million, but in visitors. So even if Warwick Castle visitors were 1 million, which I wouldn't think it was, because also Madame Tussauds is going to be in gateway attractions, so that's going to be getting pulled down.
Yeah.
But so maybe let's say Warwick Castle is 1.5 million annual visitors, but that number is still sitting in the last year number for theme parks. So if you take that out, actually theme parks were up a substantial amount.
So what they haven't done is kind of shown you like for like figures there. So what they really needed to do was take Warwick Castle out of the 2023 figures, and then we'd get a more accurate picture as to how the resort theme parks are.
And these kind of things happen all the time. But it is a big thing that if you need to restate something, you need to have a real reason why you're restating. Because as soon as you put a number in one of these reports, it's treated as gospel for the next 2 to 3 years.
So, and restating is what you mean by saying moving Warwick Castle from resorts theme parks over to gateway attractions. That's called restating it. Okay, so that's interesting. So I wonder why they. I guess it makes more sense in a gateway attraction. It doesn't have rides. Everything else, the resort theme parks obviously all have rides.
But it's kind of more that experience. Because you could classify it as a theme park, because what's the one in France called? Bois
de Feu. French people are outraged at how I've just pronounced that.
Bois de Feu. So they would probably recognise that as a theme park, and obviously we've got the one up in Bishop Auckland, which is
Yeah.
escaping my mind right now as well.
Kinren? Kinren?
Kinren.
Is that how you say
Yes, that
it?
is the one. That is the one. Literally watched Sean's video last night from it, so I don't know how I can't remember.
Yeah, so that's a strategic decision from them for some reason to reclassify Warwick Castle
As a
as a
gateway
gateway.
attraction
Oh,
now.
what's interesting is there was talk, I think it was earlier this year or very late last year, of them wanting to dispose of some of the gateway attractions like the sea life centres. So is this all part of that strategic plan, maybe getting the right assets in the right categories?
Yeah, because when you're a company the size of Merlin, it's very difficult to get all of the right people to do all of the right things for these different areas. It could be very difficult on the board to have someone who specializes in gateway attractions, working with Legoland and theme parks.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to get that blend. And maybe they just don't have the resources available to do that. So they've decided, with Universal coming, let's focus on theme parks. They are our biggest money generator. They are our biggest media area of the business. Let's maybe sell sea life centres apart from a couple, and then let's focus on theme parks and really make some investment. Let's see if that will happen. I mean, they've got, and this getting to the point I was making earlier on the debt to asset ratio, that they have the wiggle room, is what we'll call it, to finance these loans for new rides. They basically run at a debt to asset ratio of about 30%.
Okay.
So that basically means if you totaled up all their assets of their carrying value, so even with the depreciation of the debt is only 30% of that value. Whereas you compare that to someone like Blackpool Pleasure Beach, it's more 70%.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And that is pre gyro swing loan as well.
Pre-Evictus.
Which is £8-9 million plus interest on top of that, which for a company the size of Blackpool, you could imagine they're getting interest rates of about 4 to 5%. So
wow, okay.
Because again in these Merlin reports, something that appears is the cost of borrowing has gone up. That cost them 36 million to refinance debt.
That more than it would have cost the year before, you mean?
Yeah. So that is part of this loss. 36 million of that loss is refinancing debt and interest.
Yeah.
So these are known as finance costs.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not a new debt as such. It's just what they had to pay is now going to cost them more to pay. I mean, anyone who's got a mortgage is probably in the same situation. Yeah. You take out a mortgage a few years ago with one rate, and now suddenly you're paying a lot more. Okay. So that makes it. I mean, the Blackpool thing, that's like a little bomb just going off in the background there. We might have to come back to that one. Just going back onto this Merlin report, one of the things that stood out to me was that it seems like the revenue's down across the Legoland brands. Now, I remember looking at the last year's report, and Legoland were like the goose laying the golden egg. Amongst all their brands, Legoland was the money spinner for Merlin. It was like untouchable. The revenue being down there, do you think that's mostly down to these two which haven't been performing?
It has to be in part. I think Lego as a brand is still growing ever more. So we see even in the F1 them racing around in Lego cars around a track. So like Lego's as big as it's ever been. Yeah. There's a Lego store in nearly every single city. You probably couldn't say that a few years ago. But I don't know if the operations at every other Legoland are the same as Windsor. I'm not surprised revenue's on its way down.
I know, it's such a shame. It should be such a good park.
I mean, when you've got your target age of 5 to 10-year-olds who don't want to wait in hour-long queues, you maybe should invest more in operations. But maybe that's their revenue spinner. They're going full Portaventura style, where we're going to make lots of money from selling lots of fast track.
that was our previous episode, the fast track episode where we talked about that. And is it all a big game plan? I mean, you could say that amongst Merlin parks overall. To be honest, I mean, operations still haven't been great in 2025 over any of the resort theme parks. But yeah, definitely Legoland wins.
You charge the premium like Paulton's, and you don't need, or Europa Park, and you don't need a fast track.
Yeah, exactly that.
However, I do say Europa Park's a bit of an outlier as a Mac. It's basically a showground, fair for Mac.
Yeah, so you can't have your showground with all the rides breaking down, can you? They wouldn't sell many of them. Okay, so probably Legoland is being dragged down by those couple that we know aren't performing. But yeah, generally maybe they're slightly down. Don't really know why. One of the things that seemed to stand out was that the Merlin's working capital was down a bit. Can you see any reasons for that?
Working capital, as I mentioned earlier, is just not really something that a business such as Merlin, the way that they operate, is it's not really. They don't have lots of inventory. They don't have lots of people who owe them money.
Mm-hmm.
So your peak for working capital is basically how much money could you assume in the short term to basically pay off all your debt that you owe in the short term. So it's in when we say short term, we need 12 months. So if you see the word current asset or current liability, those are assets or liabilities that are due within the next 12 months.
Yeah.
So basically what it means is they've got more liabilities due in 12 months than they have assets to be received in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
But again, as I said, inventory and receivables are really the kind of big ones. So for like B2B businesses, their working capital is massive because they've got loads of inventory and loads of people who owe them money. But whereas someone like Merlin and theme parks in general, their liabilities are massive because you've basically got a mix of all the debt you owe on financing rides, along with you have to do something called deferred income. So due to accounting laws again, you can only recognize the revenue as and when it's useful. So therefore, if you pre-book now to go to Legoland in September, Merlin won't be able to recognize the money you've paid them as revenue until you actually get.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
So they then obviously have a massive liability line called deferred income because they basically have loads of people pre-booking, say like even annual passes.
Yeah.
If you pay for your Merlin annual pass up front, they can only recognize, obviously, they have to apportion it across the 12 months.
Oh, really? Even though they've got that, even if it's paid up front?
Because it's deemed a prepayment. You are prepaying for something that you'll reap the benefits for in 12 months' time still.
Right, okay.
So
that's interesting.
They have to recognise the benefit as and when it's incurred.
Right. Yeah. Because you'd think, that would make sense if you're paying for it monthly, which a lot of people do. Yes. But even if you pay for it upfront annually, they can't claim all of that revenue at the start.
Just think about people who pay like quarterly council tax. If you were to account for that, you have to basically, in the accounts, you have to recognise that you paid for your council tax in March, in April, in May, but you didn't actually pay that bill until June. Yeah. So the cash isn't leaving your bank till June, but in financial accounts, you have to recognise, you basically have to assume what the value of that invoice will be, and then you have to say May, June, July. So you've got, this is the world of accruals and prepayments, which is a very nerdy accountancy thing that I won't bore anyone with for any longer.
We only go into theme park nerdy stuff here, but no, I think you've given a good overview of explaining that. As someone who doesn't understand finance stuff at all, I can follow along with what you've said there. So I'm going to assume that everyone else is with me and we're all on this journey together. One of the big standout things, now this has been a big topic for Merlin this year, is staffing, and the staff costs did increase massively in this report from the 2023 one. There have been big staff cuts at Merlin this year, which have been very publicly acknowledged. those staff cost increases, do you think that is just minimum wage increases and stuff, or do you think they were taking on more people and now they're like, no, that's got a bit too expensive?
Yeah. Let's not get political here. When the government are forcing you to give your staff 10% pay rises every year for the last 3 to 4 years, it's not going to be helpful. Because obviously it's cross-party, all parties have done it, so it's not political. But yes, so that would explain why they are trying to make cuts, because they're trying to improve operations. Obviously, as we've discussed, operations at Legoland, it's the same across most Merlin parks. Operations aren't the greatest. So if you want to improve operations, you need more staff on the rides. How to get more staff? You need to pay more staff to be on the rides and work longer hours. And they're going to have to find the saving from somewhere. It looks like they're going to find the saving from entertainments and Merlin magic making.
Yeah.
And they'll just contract them out because, again, this is more funky accounting. A human who is on your payroll is deemed as an asset.
Okay.
And you take the financial liability of that person, because that person has to be paid a pension. That person has to be paid. You have to pay national insurance on that person. If you were to contract someone in, that's basically an expense. It's a liability to your business. You're basically paying that person out. You're paying an invoice to the company who contracts that person. You don't need to pay their pension. You don't need to give them any benefits like a Merlin annual pass. You don't need to pay their national insurance. Their employer does that for them. And also, it looks very good to shareholders because you can go to them and say, I've got all these liabilities for freelancer costs or contractor costs. We could just get rid of them tomorrow and we'd make more money.
Yeah.
Whereas an employee, there's laws around that.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get rid of an employee.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's interesting because it was one of the questions that's kind of propped up, like why fire all your entertainment staff to only contract them back in? And generally, contracting's more expensive initially up front because obviously the contractor has to make money off that contract as well, not just the employee. So we're like, well, why have they done that? That doesn't seem to make much sense. But as you've just explained, maybe it's from an accounting point of view, it actually does make a lot more sense. Although I'm still going to say not good for the employees who have obviously suffered through this. The entertainment staff, as much as some are going to be contracted back in for the events like Scarefest, I think we are missing them in the parks generally. I think we have lost something as theme park fans.
Childhood flashbacks to watching the pirate show at Legoland. I absolutely loved it, and then going back last year and watching it again, I loved that show. I used to pretend jumping off my trampoline that I was part of that show.
Yeah, I mean that is probably the one that got the most attention and what
because it's just a ghost town in Heart Lake City now.
Yeah.
Autumn's riding adventure, whatever it is, the tallest height restriction in the park and always seems to have a 50-minute queue. And then you've got the Legoland Express has just been done up and beautifully, but you're just not getting the foot traffic around there now because you've not got a group of people watching a show and then dispersing out. Yeah.
No, yeah, very valid point. And I suppose this is where it can come back around in a circle. You might go, okay, well, we'll do this clever accounting, we'll get rid of these people, we'll hire them back in through a contract, and that doesn't look nice to shareholders. If ultimately it starts hitting your bottom line because people start saying, I'm not sure it's worth my money to go on a day out there, then I guess those decisions sometimes get revisited and was that the right thing to do? And can we carry on doing things this way? So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out for them. One of the things I wanted to mention, because there seems to be a bit of, I don't know, a bit of a false understanding around this, was about the Blackpool assets. Now, this wasn't in last year's report. This has happened this year. But some people have said that Merlin have had to sell off the Blackpool assets. I just want to be clear. From my understanding, Merlin never owned those Blackpool assets. They were just managing them on behalf of Blackpool Council, and they've basically said, yeah, we are not going to manage them anymore for you. You have them, but they never owned them, so therefore they haven't sold them.
And there's your operational saving.
Yeah.
You now no longer have to employ the staff to run those Blackpool attractions. Yeah. So therefore you've made some operational saving there. Yeah. Obviously it's not going to cover the operational downtime turn of, I think it's roughly 30 million. Yeah, 30 to 40 million is the operational loss from performance. But obviously that can be regrouped in other ways. Because other parks have seen the same downfall in operational costs.
Yeah.
Universal, the one that everyone's like, oh, Universal can be so great once it's here. They're going to show Merlin how to do everything right. They've had the exact same problem in the US.
Really? So you've looked at these figures, haven't you, for Universal over there?
Yeah. So the drop in EBITDA, which is basically earnings.
This is so confused. This EBITDA. I've seen people talking about it. Yeah. What is it?
So EBITDA is the earnings before interest, taxation, depreciation, and amortization. So that's basically before all your funky accounting, let's call it.
Okay.
So the true, this is my money in, this is my accountancy money in, this is my accountancy money out. Merlin's dropped 13%.
Yeah.
And fair enough, Merlin run a lot of theme parks in a country where they've been forced to give 10% pay rises. It's not the same in Florida. However, Universal have still dropped 12% in EBITDA.
Right.
In the same time period. So that tells me that it's more of an industry problem.
Okay.
Disney is the outlier. Disney can hire whoever they want, however much they want to pay them, because it's a desirable thing to work for Disney. Disney are the desirable company in the theme park world, and they just make so much money. It's unreal. But Six Flags are also seeing the same problem.
Okay.
I don't have the exact percentage of their EBITDA drop, but it is within lines of Universal.
Okay.
Six Flags figures are pretty difficult to read because they obviously merged with Cedar Fair in the middle of 2024, and so therefore their financial results are pretty unreadable.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, well, this was included here and this wasn't included there. So we might have to wait a year or so to have a good reading on Six Flags. But if you want, the Universal one is the one that obviously the people in the UK are looking at.
Yeah.
Revenue, both down 3%. EBITDA, there was only a 1% difference in both their drops. So both companies are performing pretty similar.
And that, just to be clear, that Universal figure isn't influenced at all by the opening of Epic and all the costs that would have gone along with getting that ready in the 2024 accounts.
Well, no, because Epic Universe is an asset. All the rides there are assets. Yes, there would have been some extensional costs, but then you could say, well, Merlin are opening all these different Legolands around the world. They've invested in more rides last year. So in 2024, Merlin probably opened a similar, if not more, rides and attractions than Universal.
Yeah.
Yes, Epic Universe cost an absolute fortune and it looks great without any trees, but
the trees are growing.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll have some Hyperia grass soon.
We've got some wild grass growing around Hyperia. So.
Yeah,
or weeds, as sometimes we like to call them.
But all in all, it's pretty. It's just a downturn for the industry in total in operational costs, because you're not seeing an increase in revenue because people have got less disposable income to spend in a theme park.
Yeah, and
we're seeing that. Alton Towers. Look at the field now, where obviously the stage used to be. It's now just lined with people having their picnics all day. That is probably more to do with Aramark, but than people having less disposable income.
There's a conversation. Why did they have to bring in Aramark? There must be a clever accounting reason for that as well. Again, that's probably going back a few years.
Again, it's contracting. Again, it's the exact same. They don't have to employ the staff.
Yeah,
they're all Aramark employees.
In a summary, though, I mean, I'm taking from this, none of this is as bad as first thought or as bad as the headline makes it appear.
Certainly not. I see no reason for them to be selling any theme park. Thorpe and Alton are obviously the ones that people are putting out there because obviously they've invested so much in IPs at Chessington, they're not going to drop that.
Yeah.
Or it's more likely they're the ones that people want them to sell.
There's probably a bit of that in there as well, yeah.
But no, I really, really don't see any reason why they should be selling the parks. happily come back in a year's time when they release the next set of results, and they've just announced that they've sold Fort Park and Alton Towers to Six Flags or someone. But
No.
until that day, I will
No.
sit here and say I don't think they'll sell them anytime soon.
Okay, I mean, if they get sold to Six Flags, it's going to be a lot of enthusiasts getting very irate. I think there'll be
To
riots.
be honest, there's very few companies that would be able to afford Fort Park or Alton Towers.
Yeah,
Universal won't want to buy them.
No.
Disney won't want to buy them.
I guess maybe just some sort of private investment firm, maybe.
Maybe a very rich theme park enthusiast.
Someone win the Euro Millions. Make them an offer. Okay, that's interesting. And also, they're not about to go bust anytime soon.
No.
There you go. Very straight. Okay. I guess the figures are kind of set in stone and black and white. Is there a little bit of creative accounting that can be done, or is it what we see is like as it is?
The report can be spun in a narrative that Merlin wants to spin.
Yeah.
Like they have total control over the wording that they put in that report.
Yeah.
The numbers are obviously audited and finalized, and that's the official numbers. They cannot be spun any other way.
Okay.
But the way that Merlin present those numbers in the report can, because obviously this report is made for investors.
Yes.
It's made for people to come and spend their money and put it into equity for Merlin to buy a trackless dark ride, because they don't have one of them. So let's say that.
Okay.
They're trying to present themselves in a way, because they've gone very hard on corporate responsibility and sustainability in their report. And that is something that investors are very into right now. Okay. If you can show that you're future-proof, because investors around the world are quite scared right now that countries might start throwing taxes on everything for non-greenery. So if you can present in a way that you are a green company, let's say, then investors are happy to invest in you, because it's kind of a change in direction of investors into wanting the most monetary benefit. In comparing now, they want a whole bucket of, they want the company to be well governed, they want the company to be sustainable. That adds into financial, obviously, but they also want them to obviously be responsible for their actions.
Okay. So that's why there's so much of that stuff in there. I mean, it's interesting. There's an awful lot of that stuff as well in the Universal Special Development Order plans as well, that also are currently under public consultation. So interesting to know why that stuff is so important and how that affects things financially. So the figures are set in stone. It's open to interpretation and open to a slightly little bit of spin as to what those figures mean. So this is your interpretation of it as someone who works in this field, but the figures are what they are. And I think the takeaway is it's not as bad as we thought. And actually, maybe Merlin are not doing any differently to Universal. Like you say, maybe it's an industry trend with Disney bucking that trend.
And we say Disney bucking that trend. Let's give a shout out to Paultons. They are also bucking that trend.
Oh, really?
Their last accounts, which they don't have the like-for-like time period yet. So their like-for-like time period are due to Companies House by the end of August. So
not long to wait.
Yeah, so we will know by then. But Paultons are a very cash-rich company. They did drop a lot year on year in cash, but that was mainly because they kind of pretty much half paid for Ghostly Manor in cash by the looks of it, which is definitely not something most theme parks do.
No, just have that.
Because their debt to asset is like 20%, which is unheard of in the theme park industry.
I mean, that's amazing news that Paultons is the park that we've talked about. I think every enthusiast has been talking about as holding it up as potentially the best park in the UK, just from an overall guest experience point of view, and a lovely place to be, and lovely staff, and great operations. It's kind of reassuring to know that you can get all those things and make a lot of money by doing those things right. That gives me faith as an enthusiast that our park should and could be run that way a little bit more. So I'm glad that I'm glad that it's not, oh yeah, they do all these things really well, but actually they're making no money. I'm glad that the things actually stack up together. That's really interesting. And we will see what happens at the end of August to see how that is looking for them. But I have every faith that they are going to continue to go from strength to strength because they are doing everything right. Just to go back to a part that you mentioned earlier, which was a bit of a bomb dropping off, the Blackpool accounts though. Now look, Blackpool Pleasure Beach is a very special park to me, and I want it to go from strength to strength. I think we all know that it's a tough market at the moment, especially for, I say for a family-run park, but then Portons are clearly showing me that it can be done. We know Blackpool Pleasure Beach have said they've closed rides this year, literally to save some money because it's not worth them operating them. The cost of operating them isn't worth the amount of visitors who get on them. The accounts that you can see for Blackpool Pleasure Beach, they are very different to the Merlin accounts, aren't they? Because they're filed in a totally different way, and they're also quite behind.
Yeah, they're very well. In the UK, you have 9 months to submit your accounts to Companies House from when you close your financial year. So obviously they closed their financial year in March 2024.
Yeah.
So therefore they would have submitted these accounts late 2024, early 2025.
Yeah.
So therefore we've only got numbers up to March 2024. So as I mentioned earlier, we're missing the gyro swing loan in these numbers most likely. Obviously, I can't say that for definite.
Because you can't see
I
itemized.
can't see it. I can't see it. No. But they still, obviously this was the one where it was quite widely known that they made a substantial loss. So they made an operating loss of 1.1 million, and then back to our financial loss where it's including all these finance adjustments, etc. That they made a loss of 2.76 million pounds.
Right.
Which for a company with a turnover of 32 million pounds is a lot.
Right. Okay. And you said it was their debt to asset ratio was also very high compared to
70%. But and this was something that I mentioned before, was that they have an opportunity to make some cash if they need it. They own the freehold to the land that they sit on. They can do whatever with that freehold they want. It might benefit them when it comes to planning permission for rides, that they don't have to go through leasehold, freehold agreements. But it's a growing trend in business altogether of companies to lease property and air and land, because you can basically sell it for a quick win to a private equity company. Blackpool, I'm no land registrar. I don't know how much it's cost them to hold that land, but rough estimate, probably 5 to 6 million. So if they were desperate for cash, they could do that.
They could. Yeah.
They wouldn't want the headlines to go with that.
No, I was just thinking as you were saying that. I cannot imagine Amanda Thompson ever selling the Pleasure Beach land. I mean, I'd say that just as an outsider, as someone who observes things, for a family-run park to do that, I think that's going to be a bit of a gut punch. So I imagine they very much hope it will never come to that, and I very much hope it doesn't come to that. But clearly you can't keep spending if the money isn't coming in the other end. You have to make adjustments somehow, and they've done that this year with the closure of those smaller attractions and Skyforce. I guess we will have to see what happens next for them. Clearly, Invictus is a big investment for them, and I'm hoping it pays off. I love a gyro swing. I've said it many times on this podcast. There's a lot of enthusiasts who are saying Blackpool Pleasure Beach needs a tilt coaster, having seen Siren's Curse open at Cedar Point, and I fully agree. I think it would look great in the middle of Blackpool Pleasure Beach, but that is a costly investment. And I don't know if we're going to see anything like that anytime soon there. I don't want to say it's worrying figures because, like I said, this isn't my train set. But it's interesting, I think, to say that is their debt to asset ratio compared to somewhere else. And even in the family-owned park sphere, Paultons are clearly showing that there's a lot less. So interesting. I thank you so much for looking through all these figures for me. I mean, I just see a load of numbers and my brain literally melts. So I guess for you, it's a little bit more straightforward because you do this all the time. You can kind of look at them and go, okay, yeah, I can see what's going on there. And I hopefully this has made sense to everyone. I think our takeaway is Merlin and okay, we're not panicking. We're not thinking we're going to have to give up our season passes. And also maybe even Project Horizon is not dead in the water, because that's the other big fear, is that there's no money left and we're never going to see that at Alton Towers, or where David Walliams Land is just going to limp on forever in its very sad state. But hopefully that isn't the case. And we will see some of these hard decisions, the staffing cuts, actually translate into something good, maybe. Ross, thank you so much for coming on Parkcast. Listen, whenever I have a guest on, we do this.
Just gotta ride it.
This is called Just Gotta Ride It. Now, you are a theme park enthusiast as well as a financial analyst. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot. It's the part of the podcast where we say, if you could only save one roller coaster, everything else is getting destroyed because there's no cash left and they have to dispose of their assets, or something along those financial lines. Which one are you saving? What have we all got to go and ride?
That's a good one. It's got to be Nemesis Reborn. As someone who lives quite close to Alton Towers, I still remember all the time still not being tall enough to go on it for many years, watching my older siblings go on it, just waiting for that day to be able to go on it.
Yeah,
we were Merlin annual pass holders all the way when I was like 20 years ago, when it first started as a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely one to keep. I do love Wicker Man though. That is probably my favourite ride, but at Alton Towers, but Nemesis has probably got to stay because of the heritage.
Yeah, I think we'd all be very upset if Nemesis hadn't been reborn and had instead just met a different fate. So, okay, I can go along with that one. That's great. Thank you again, Ross, for coming on Parkcast. Hopefully this has made sense to you. If you are a non-financial person like me and you saw those Merlin headlines and you wondered, what does it mean for us all? Hopefully this has helped in some way. If you haven't already and you enjoyed today's episode, please do give us a little subscribe. You'll get a notification then whenever we release a new episode. And if you want to give us a rating, I'm not going to say no. If you've got anything you'd like us to talk about on a future episode of Parkcast, please just drop me a DM. You can find me on all the social medias. Just search Parkcast. I'll come up for you there. And for now, we've been Parkcast.
Parkcast. The UK's original theme park podcast.